Oh, yes. We had very few people working when I first started. And of course it grew, but we were just a family. I mean, we all worked together and we would help each other out, if somebody would get behind. And I went through building changes, building at about 3, I guess, or maybe 4.
It was in that little brick house. It was one of the older little brick houses. And the cashier's department and Mr. Slusher's secretary was in the living room of the house. And the bookkeeping department, which was Carol Scott and Nelma Justin, they were in the dining room. Mr. Slusher's office was in the breakfast room. And then in the kitchen, they had the microfilm machine and other storage, paper storage for different printers and stuff. But of course, we didn't have too many. A lot of it was done by hand. And upstairs was the engineering department. And so downstairs, of course, was where the men went out to repair phones. So it came to the time that we got to move out on Chancery Street. It was so odd because I lived 2 doors down and I watched it all go up. And it was an old 2-story, beautiful old log house. And they had tore it down and that's where they built Ben Lomond. The service in day 1 when we finally went to Dialtone, and I do not know the date of we went to Dialtone, but we were right at it when we moved to the building. And from that day, it really changed a lot because they had never used dial phones around here.
Oh yes, there was so many I could not remember. But I guess the big thing that I saw was changing the POTS, plain old telephone service. From that, it went to so many enhanced technologies.
The people in the area that Ben Lomond served initially were very, very thankful for the service. I remember one year there was a gentleman that came from Sparta, and he always stood up and made a comment of how thankful he was that Ben Lomond provided service to the area where he lived and how appreciative he was of it. And we could just count on that. Every year he did.
Well, when you start off with rotary phones and a few touch-tone phones and to what we have now, you can imagine the change. Even in the accounting industry, we saw the breakup of Bell, AT&T. That brought a lot of changes to the accounting world, the way things were done. I worked some with plant accounting, so maybe not known the logistics of a lot of it, but I remember having open wire on the books, copper wire on the books.
Well, yeah, like I said, we started out with open wire. We had put up a lot of open wire back when I first started, and then we went to cable, started putting up cable and stranding cable, and it was good for a long time. When you put it in the air, they're always shooting it. Dove season was terrible sometimes. I mean, they'd shoot it, you have to go replace it. You couldn't hardly fix all of it. It'd have so many shots in it, you just have to replace it, yeah.
Yeah, when I came in '73, we had 8 party lines, open wire circuits going to people's houses. I know this is not going to mean nothing to a lot of people, but that was a pole that had 2 wires that ran down that circuit to their house. 10-cent payphones. It was just, and that was modern technology at the time. Ben Lomond has always had technology that was equal to or better than what Bell, GTE, any of these other phone companies had, because they, as a co-op, they always put their money back into improving their services. When they first came to the McMinnville office and made it, it was the first office to go to DTMF or touch-tone, DTMF, dual-tone multi-frequency. Well, the people in McMinnville could get push-button phones, or anyone served out of that office, and all the other places wanted that. So they put in converters And if you got this converter, all it did was it listened to those tones come in from your phone, and then it redialed that out. So if it was a 7, it would dial a 7. The office didn't change, but it gave you the illusion of having, it was much slower than probably dialing it, you know, on the rotary dial, but that was our first attempt at giving everybody touch-tone phones. And then we went all private lines. Well, a lot of these older people didn't want a private line. For number one, it cost a little bit more. And number two, they couldn't all get on there together and keep up with the news. So that was quite a deal going to private lines and trying to get some of these people to take a private line.
When I first started, we had open wire, we had party lines, and when it was time to cut for non-pay, you really dreaded it because you had to go out to the house. You know, to start with, would give everybody a call, but some of them, they would make you a promise when they'd pay their bill. Then you go back a week later, well, they didn't come in, so you'd have to go out to the house to disconnect the drop. And sometimes they wasn't in the best mood when you went out there to disconnect their drop. So when everything went to a private line, that was a big advantage. And then also running trouble, when it's a party line, you may end up going to 4 different homes before you could find a problem, you know. So that was really time consuming.
We have seen the world change as far as communications. Back in 1984, we still had open line, 8-party open line circuits feeding our customers. And I've got to be part of that with Tony Turner and the Mike Pelhams and the old ones back in the day that kept that stuff going. And I got to see that grow. I got to build that with my own hands. I got to help do that with those guys and change what we are today.
And we kept progressing up and getting more modern, and things kept changing in the central office, and we started moving on up, as they say. It's unreal, unreal.
I think it was 1994. We did 3 major things. That was the birth of BLC, Ben Communications. We went equal access, and we did a software change. Well, actually, we went from paper to computer. And that, I mean, all that happened in 1 year. And it was a really big year.
But in '96, the FCC had a new order come out, and it was called the 1996 Telecommunications Act. Well, that act allowed other companies to come in and take your customers away, and you could compete with other carriers. Well, there's 2 ways you can do that. You could just port them over and use your own a network away from the customer, or you could build your own network and compete with another carrier. We'd never heard of this. This is the first concept that competition really came to the forefront. Well, at first it was LD, then it was the local service. So our board was really supportive and aggressive, and we formed a company, and we had to go get it certified and approved through the Tennessee Regulatory Association, or Tennessee Regulatory Authority. And we became the first local, they call it a CLEC, local competitive telecommunications carrier in Tennessee.
But when the data started coming in, when we started having to do dial-up and ISDN and 50K DSL and 756 DSL, that's when our lives changed.
And probably one of the biggest changes that probably affected every install repairman that was with Ben Lomond at the time was Ben Lomond TV. And I don't think nobody was ready for that. I know I could see these 2 little 18, 20 gauge wires sending the signal as far as me and you talking to each other from town to town, but on those same 2 little wires, we were going to start giving people ABC, NBC, CBS, and Ben Lomond TV, and it took some adjusting. I think it took some adjusting for everybody. management, workers, the whole 9 yards, but we made it work.
Somebody says, what about change? How do y'all handle change? And I says, I wouldn't know how to work if it wasn't change. Everything we do in our industry, still today, everything we've done and everything we're doing is change.